Imagine this. Every morning, as the sun peaks over the rolling hills of a sleepy Ohio town, a 72-year-old woman named Eleanor shuffles into her bathroom, flips on the faucet, and steps into a steaming shower. For decades, this has been her ritual, her sacred start to the day. The hot water cascades over her shoulders, washing away yesterday's dust, leaving her feeling fresh, clean, and alive. It's not just a bath, it's a badge of honor. A clean body is a healthy body, she'd always say, echoing the words her mother drilled into her back in the 50s. But what if that daily shower, the one she's trusted her whole life to keep her strong and spry, is secretly turning against her now that she's past 70? What if the very thing she's leaned on for comfort and pride is stripping her skin bare, draining her energy, and setting her up for a fall that could change everything? This isn't some wild guess pulled out of thin air. It's a truth that's been hiding in plain sight, backed by science, whispered by doctors, and lived out by seniors just like Eleanor who never saw it coming. Today, we're diving into her story, a tale of habit, heartbreak, and a shocking wake-up call, because it's the first step in uncovering 8 jaw-dropping facts about how often seniors should bathe after 70. Facts that might just flip everything you've ever believed about cleanliness on its head. So, stick with me as we step into Eleanor's world, because what happens next could rewrite the way you think about your own routines or the ones you help your loved ones keep. Eleanor's life in Millfield, Ohio, is the kind of simple, sturdy existence you'd find in a Norman Rockwell painting. She's got a cozy brick house with a wraparound porch, a garden out back where she grows tomatoes and zucchini, and a knack for turning yesterday's leftovers into a casserole that'd make your mouth water. At 72, she's fiercely independent, still driving her beat-up Chevy to the grocery store, still hauling her own compost bags to the curb. Her hands might be a little shaky these days, her knees a bit creakier from years of kneeling in the dirt, but she's not the type to slow down. Not yet. And that daily shower? It's her way of proving it. If I can still stand under that water every morning, she'd tell her friends at the community garden club, then I've still got plenty of fight left in me. But one crisp October morning, everything changed. The leaves outside were turning gold, the air smelled of apple cider, and Eleanor was humming an old tune as she stepped into her shower. The tiles were slick with steam, the water hot enough to fog up the mirror. She reached for the soap, steadying herself against the wall, when her foot slipped just a fraction of an inch. Her heart leapt into her throat as she grabbed the shower rod, her knees buckling beneath her. She didn't fall all the way, thank goodness, but she landed hard against the tub's edge, bruising her hip and scraping her elbow raw. For a moment, she just sat there, water pounding down, breath ragged, staring at the chipped porcelain like it had betrayed her. That was too close, she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. Too close to a broken bone. Too close to a call to 911. Too close to losing the independence she'd fought so hard to keep. She hauled herself up, wincing as she toweled off, and limped to the kitchen to make a cup of tea. But as the kettle whistled, a question gnawed at her. Was it really worth it? That shower, her daily triumph, had nearly taken her down. She thought about the ache in her hip, the sting of that scrape, and something else she'd been ignoring for months: her skin. It wasn't the soft, plump canvas it used to be. Lately, it felt tight after every shower, prickly with itchiness that kept her up at night. She'd chalked it up to getting old, but now, sitting there with a bruise blooming purple on her side, she wondered if there was more to it. Could the habit she'd clung to for decades be working against her? She wasn't wrong to wonder. Science has been shouting this from the rooftops for years, even if most of us haven't been listening. Fact number 1. Daily baths can wreak havoc on senior skin. According to the Journal of Investigative Dermatology, once you hit 70, your skin thins by about 20–30% compared to your younger years. The outer layer, the epidermis, loses its density, while the dermis underneath weakens as collagen and elastin production slows to a crawl. Those sebaceous glands that used to pump out natural oils to keep your skin smooth and supple, they're practically on strike now, leaving you with a complexion that's dry, fragile, and defenseless. Add hot water and soap to the mix, and it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. Each shower strips away what little oil your skin has left, turning it into a cracked, itchy mess that begs for relief. For Eleanor, that tight, prickly feeling wasn't just old age, it was her body screaming for a break. And then there's fact number two. Bathrooms are a danger zone for seniors, and daily showers roll out the red carpet for disaster. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention CDC drops a bombshell statistic. More than 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls every year, and those falls send millions to the ER with fractures, head injuries, or worse. For someone like Eleanor, past 70 with knees that creak and reflexes that aren't what they used to be, stepping into a wet, slippery shower is like walking through a minefield blindfolded. That morning's near miss wasn't a fluke, it was a warning. The CDC says falls are the leading cause of injury-related deaths for older adults, and bathrooms are ground zero. Wet tiles, steamy air, a tub ledge to climb over, it's a setup for a tumble that could land you in a hospital bed instead of your garden. Eleanor didn't know these stats as she sipped her tea, staring out at her zucchini plants swaying in the breeze. But she felt the weight of them in her bones. She thought about her friend Margie, who'd broken her hip last year slipping on a bathroom rug, and how she'd never walked the same since. She thought about her own garden, her pride and joy, and how a fall could steal that from her too. For the first time in her life, she asked herself a question she'd never dared to voice. Do I really need to shower every day? It felt almost rebellious, like tossing out her mother's rulebook. But the bruise on her hip and the itch on her arms were louder than tradition. Maybe cleanliness wasn't what she'd always thought it was. Maybe there was a better way, a safer way to feel fresh and strong at 72. That afternoon, she called her grandson, Jake, a 25-year-old nurse who'd just started working at a clinic in Columbus. Jake, she said, her voice still shaky from the morning, I almost fell in the shower today. And my skin's been so dry lately, do you think I'm overdoing it? Jake paused, then chuckled softly. Grandma, you're not going to believe this, but we've been talking about this exact thing at work. There's a whole science to it, stuff they don't tell you growing up. Let me dig into it and call you back. Eleanor hung up, a flicker of hope sparking in her chest. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to stumble into a world of revelations, 8 shocking facts that would turn her daily shower into a distant memory and bring her back to the life she loved. Her story was just beginning, and it was about to get a whole lot wilder. Before we dive deeper into Eleanor's journey, I'd love to hear from you. If her story's hitting home, or if you've got a loved one who's faced a scare like this, drop a 1 in the comments below to let me know you're with me. Where are you watching from today? And if these kinds of eye-opening tales about senior health spark something in you, please share your thoughts below and hit that subscribe button. Eleanor's about to uncover some mind-blowing truths, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Eleanor hung up the phone with Jake, her grandson's words still buzzing in her ears. There's a whole science to it. Science? About showering? She almost laughed at the idea. For 72 years, she'd never thought twice about it. Turn on the water, lather up, rinse off. It was as simple as brushing her teeth or brewing her morning coffee. But now, with a bruise throbbing on her hip and a nagging itch creeping up her arms, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. What if the steamy showers she'd loved for decades weren't just a harmless habit? What if they were silently chipping away at her health, her strength, her independence? As she sat at her kitchen table, staring at the garden she'd nearly lost the chance to tend, she decided it was time to dig deeper. And what she found, thanks to Jake and a trip to the doctor, would turn her world upside down. A few days after her near fall, Eleanor booked an appointment with Dr. Linda Hayes, a dermatologist in nearby Athens, Ohio. She'd been putting it off. Doctors weren't her favorite people, but the itchiness was getting worse, and the dry patches on her elbows looked like a roadmap of cracked desert trails. She shuffled into the office, her trusty plaid scarf wrapped tight against the autumn chill, and spilled her story. I shower every day, she said, almost defensive. Always have. But lately, my skin's so dry it feels like sandpaper, and I almost fell the other morning. Am I doing something wrong? Dr. Hayes leaned back, peering over her glasses with a knowing smile. Eleanor, she said, you're not alone. And no, it's not your fault it's your age. After 70, your skin's not the same game anymore. Let me break it down for you. That's when shocking fact number 3 hit her like a ton of bricks. Daily baths don't just dry out senior skin, they practically wage war on it. According to the American Academy of Dermatology, skin over 70 is 20–30% thinner than it was in youth, and its natural oil factories, those sebaceous glands, have all but clocked out. Hot water, the kind Eleanor loved for its soothing heat, acts like a thief, stripping away the dwindling reserves of sebum that keeps skin soft and protected. Add in soap, even the gentle stuff, and it's a double whammy, dissolving lipids and throwing off the skin's natural pH, which should hover around 4.5 to 5.5. Dr. Hayes pulled out a diagram, pointing to the layers. See this? She said. Every shower's peeling back your armor. That tightness, that itch, it's your skin crying out for mercy. Eleanor stared, her mouth dry. Her armor? Gone. She'd spent her life thinking more water meant more health. But here was the truth. Her showers were leaving her defenseless. She left the office with a prescription for a thick moisturizer and a piece of advice that stuck like glue. Cut back to once or twice a week. Trust me, you'll feel the difference. Once or twice a week. Eleanor couldn't wrap her head around it. She'd feel dirty, wouldn't she? Smelly? Unkempt? The idea clashed with everything she'd ever known. But the cracks on her elbows and the memory of that slippery tub were hard to argue with. That night, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, tracing the rough patches on her arms. Her skin wasn't just dry, it was a battlefield, scarred from years of hot water and suds. She skipped the shower, opting for a quick wipe with a damp cloth instead. It felt strange, incomplete, but she went to bed curious. Maybe Dr. Hayes was onto something. The next day, Jake called back, his voice buzzing with excitement. Grandma, I've been reading up on this, it's wild. You know how tired you get after a shower? There's a reason for that, too. Eleanor perked up, cradling the phone as she watered her zucchini plants. Tired? She said. I thought that was just me being old. Jake laughed. Nope. It's fact number 4. Daily baths can exhaust seniors, and it's not just in your head. He'd found a study from the Journal of the American Medical Association that laid it out plain as day. Bathing isn't a walk in the park for folks over 70, it's a full-body workout. Standing under hot water for 10 or 15 minutes taxes the heart, especially if you've got arthritis or a touch of frailty like Eleanor did. The heat dilates blood vessels, dropping blood pressure and leaving you dizzy. For her, with creaky knees and a back that ached after gardening, every bend to wash her feet or reach for the shampoo was a strain she'd never clocked. By the time she toweled off, she was wiped out, too tired to tend her plants or even enjoy her evening tea. It's like running a marathon just to feel clean, Jake said. And get this. The study says cutting back can save that energy for stuff you actually love, like your garden. Eleanor nodded slowly, the pieces clicking into place. She'd always blamed her fatigue on age, but now she saw it. Those showers were draining her dry, in more ways than one. She thought back to the days she'd skipped her afternoon weeding because she was too worn out after her morning rinse. How many zucchini had she lost to that exhaustion? How many quiet moments on her porch had slipped away? It wasn't just her skin at stake, it was her life. Hey, if you're still with me as Eleanor uncovers these wild truths, drop a 2 in the comments below to let me know you're here. Have you or someone you love ever felt wiped out after a shower and thought it was just normal? Tell me about it. I'm dying to hear your stories. Hit that subscribe button if you're loving this dive into senior health, because Eleanor's journey is about to get even crazier. But it didn't stop there. Jake had one more bombshell up his sleeve, fact number 5. Less bathing could actually lower infection risk. Wait, what? Eleanor sputtered, nearly dropping her watering can. I thought washing more kept the germs away. Jake grinned through the phone. That's what we all think, Grandma. But check this out. The New England Journal of Medicine found that seniors who bathe less have fewer skin tears. And fewer tears mean fewer chances for bacteria to sneak in. He explained how aging skin, paper thin and slow to heal, splits under the stress of hot water and scrubbing. Those tiny rips barely visible to the naked eye turn into gateways for nasty bugs like Staphylococcus aureus, which can spark infections ranging from itchy rashes to full-blown cellulitis. Every shower's rolling the dice, Jake said, but dial it back, and your skin gets a fighting chance to hold the line. Eleanor hung up, her mind spinning. Fewer showers, fewer infections? It sounded backwards, like telling her to skip brushing her teeth to avoid cavities. She pictured her skin as a fortress, its walls crumbling under the daily onslaught of water and soap. She'd always prided herself on being clean, but what if clean wasn't the goal anymore? What if safe was? That night, she skipped the shower again, wiping down with a cloth and a dab of moisturizer. She still felt uneasy. Years of habit don't vanish overnight, but when she woke up the next morning, her skin didn't itch. Her knees didn't ache as much either. It was a small win, but it lit a spark. She called Jake back. "Okay, kid," she said, "you've got my attention. What else you got?" Little did she know, the biggest shocks were still ahead, and they'd push her to rethink everything she'd ever called hygiene. Eleanor was starting to feel a flicker of hope. 2 weeks into her experiment cutting back to a shower every few days, swapping hot water for a damp cloth and a smear of moisturizer, she noticed a shift. The prickly itch that used to wake her up at night was fading. Her knees didn't groan as much when she climbed the porch steps. She even had the energy to weed her garden one crisp afternoon, coaxing her tomatoes back to life with a tenderness she hadn't felt in months. Maybe Jake's onto something, she muttered to herself, brushing dirt off her hands. She wasn't sold yet. Years of shower every day or your filthy still tugged at her conscience, but the evidence was piling up. Her skin wasn't a cracked desert anymore. She felt lighter, stronger. For the first time in a long time, she dared to believe she could rewrite her rules and still be the Eleanor she loved. But life has a way of testing you just when you think you've got it figured out. It was a Tuesday morning, gray and damp with the kind of Ohio drizzle that seeps into your bones. Eleanor woke up determined to stick to her new routine. No shower, just a quick wipe down. She'd promised her garden club she'd bring zucchini bread to their weekly meet-up, a little ritual that kept her tethered to her Millfield community. She bustled around the kitchen, mixing batter, the smell of cinnamon filling the air. Everything was fine until it wasn't. As she bent to grab a pan from the lower cupboard, her elbow brushed the counter, and a sharp sting shot through her arm. She glanced down and froze. The skin on her elbow, already rough from years of showers, had split open, a thin, angry crack oozing a bead of blood. Just a scratch, she told herself, slapping a Band-Aid on it and pushing through. By evening, though, that scratch was a problem. At the garden club, her elbow throbbed under her sweater, and a faint redness crept around the edges. She brushed it off, probably just irritation from the Band-Aid, right? But the next morning, she woke up to a nightmare. Her elbow was swollen, hot to the touch, and streaked with red lines snaking up her arm. Panic clawed at her chest as she dialed Jake. "Something's wrong," she rasped. "It's my arm, it's bad." Jake didn't hesitate. "Grandma, get to the clinic now. I'll meet you there." An hour later, she sat in a sterile exam room, her garden gloves traded for a paper gown, as a doctor delivered the verdict: cellulitis. A bacterial infection, sparked by that tiny crack in her dry, fragile skin. "You're lucky we caught it early," the doctor said. "This could have gone septic." Eleanor's heart sank. Septic? From a scratch? She'd missed her garden club, spent a day hooked to an 4-drip, and now faced a week of antibiotics, all because of a crack she'd barely noticed. As the nurse adjusted her bandage, Jake squeezed her hand. "Grandma, this isn't your fault. It's that darn shower habit. I should have explained more." She looked at him, eyes wide. "What do you mean? I've barely showered this week." Jake sighed, pulling out his phone. "That's the thing. It's not just now, it's the damage from years of it. But there's something else I found. You're gonna love this. It's fact number 6. Your body cleans itself. For real." She blinked, incredulous. "Cleans itself?" "Jake, I'm not a self-cleaning oven." He laughed, Scrolling through a study from the Journal of Investigative Dermatology. No, but your skin's a living thing. It's got this thing called the microbiome, billions of tiny bacteria living on you, good ones. They eat sweat, dead skin, oils, all the stuff we think we need to wash off. And get this, they fight off the bad bugs too, like the ones that got into your arm. He tapped the screen. Hot water and soap? They kill the good guys, leave your skin wide open. But if you let it be, those microbes keep you cleaner than you think. Eleanor stared, her mind racing. Her skin a battlefield of bacteria? It sounded like science fiction, but the proof was throbbing in her elbow. Jake kept going, his voice buzzing with excitement. And here's fact number 7. Experts say once or twice a week is plenty. The American Geriatric Society backs this up. Less bathing lets your skin rebuild its natural shield. Your body's been trying to tell you this forever, Grandma. All those years of scrubbing, it's like you were wiping out your own army. Eleanor leaned back, the fore cold against her wrist. She pictured her skin as a fortress again, not crumbling this time, but alive, humming with invisible defenders. She'd spent decades blasting them away with every shower, thinking she was doing the right thing. And now, that fortress had fallen, landing her here, in a hospital gown instead of her garden. The weight of it hit her hard. She'd lost a day to this, a day she could have spent laughing with her friends, slicing zucchini bread, soaking in the chatter of Millfield's tight-knit crew. Instead, she was sidelined, her arm a swollen mess, her spirit bruised deeper than her hip ever was. Tears pricked her eyes as she whispered, "I just wanted to stay clean, Jake. To feel strong." He squeezed her hand tighter. "You are strong, Grandma, and you don't need a shower every day to prove it. Let's fix this together." She nodded, a spark of defiance flickering through the fog. She wasn't done yet, not with her garden, not with her life. But she needed a new playbook. That night, back home with a bottle of pills and a stern warning to rest, Eleanor didn't rest. She sat on her porch, the drizzle tapping the roof, and thought about Jake's words. Her body could clean itself? Experts said twice a week was enough. It still felt wrong, like cheating at a game she'd played by the rules forever. But the evidence was undeniable. Her skin was smoother when she skipped the shower. Her energy lasted longer. And now this infection screamed the truth louder than ever. She grabbed a washcloth, ran it under warm water, and gently wiped her face, her neck, her underarms. No steam, no slip, no strain. She climbed into bed, the antibiotics humming in her system, and slept better than she had in weeks. No itch, no ache, just quiet. The next morning, she called Jake. "All right, kid," she said, her voice steadier now. "I'm in. Tell me how to do this right. I'm not letting a shower take me down again." Jake chuckled. "You're a fighter, Grandma. Here's the trick. Less water, more smarts. Spot clean the sweaty spots. Let the rest ride. Your body's got this." Eleanor smiled, glancing out at her garden. The tomatoes glowed red against the gray sky, a promise of better days. She'd hit rock bottom with that infection, but it was also her wake-up call, a brutal, beautiful shove toward a truth she'd never imagined. Her fight wasn't over, it was just beginning. And the biggest shock of all, it was about to set her free. Eleanor woke up the morning after her hospital scare with a quiet determination simmering in her chest. The antibiotics were doing their job. Her elbow was less swollen, the red streaks fading, but the real medicine was something else, a decision. She was done letting showers dictate her life. No more daily battles with steam and soap. No more risking her garden, her friends, her independence over a habit she'd never questioned. Jake's words echoed in her mind. Less water, more smarts. She'd hit rock bottom with that infection, but it wasn't the end, it was a beginning. A chance to take back control, to listen to her body instead of some dusty rulebook from the 50s. And as the Ohio sun peeked through her curtains, painting her zucchini plants gold, she knew she was ready to rewrite her story. The first week was a leap of faith. She ditched the daily shower cold turkey, trading it for a simple routine. A warm washcloth for her face, underarms, and anywhere else sweat might linger, a swipe of deodorant, and a fresh cotton shirt. No tub, No tiles, no teetering on wet edges. At first, it felt wrong, like skipping dessert after a big meal. Am I really clean? She'd mutter, sniffing her arms as if expecting betrayal. But day by day, the doubts faded. Her skin didn't itch anymore, it softened, the cracks smoothing out like a parched field after rain. She caught herself in the mirror one morning, running a hand over her elbow, still tender from the infection, but healing. Well, I'll be, she whispered. It's working. And it wasn't just her skin. Fact number 8, the final shocker started to sink in. Hygiene isn't about drowning in water, it's about what works for you. Studies in geriatric nursing back this up. Seniors don't need a full body soak to stay fresh and healthy. A quick wipe of key spots, underarms, groin, face plus hand washing and clean clothes does the trick without the risks. For Eleanor, it was a revelation. She'd spent decades chasing clean with hot showers, only to learn it was a lie sold by soap ads and habit. Now, bathing once or twice a week, she felt lighter, stronger, more herself than she had in years. The Journal of the American Medical Association had her back too. Cutting back saved energy, leaving her with stamina she hadn't tapped since her 60s. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. By week 2, the proof was in the pudding, or rather, the garden. Eleanor was back at it, kneeling in the dirt, her hands steady as she pruned her tomatoes. The ache in her knees was still there, but it didn't stop her. She'd shower every few days, quick and cool with a handheld nozzle Jake had installed. But most mornings, she stuck to her washcloth trick. The difference was night and day. No more staggering out of the bathroom, too wiped out to enjoy her day. Instead, she'd brew her tea, sit on her porch, and watch the world wake up, energy to spare. One afternoon, she even hauled a bag of compost to the curb without a second thought, grinning as her neighbor called out, "Looking spry today, El?" Spry? She hadn't heard that in a while, and she felt it deep in her bones. But the real magic happened at her garden club. She'd missed a meeting thanks to that infection, and the guilt had gnawed at her. She hated letting her crew down. So, one sunny Thursday, she baked a double batch of zucchini bread, packed it in her trusty Chevy, and rolled up to the community center with a spring in her step. Her friends swarmed her, all chatter and hugs. "Eleanor, we were worried sick," said Clara, her gray curls bouncing. "What happened?" Eleanor set the bread on the table, a sly smile tugging at her lips. "Oh, I've got a story for you," she said, "and it's a wild one." Over tea and crumbs, she spilled it all: the near fall, the dry skin, the infection, and the mind-blowing truth Jake had dug up. "Turns out," she said, leaning in, "we don't need to shower every day after 70. Once or twice a week, a little wipe down, and you're golden. My skin's better, I'm not exhausted, and I'm not slipping in that tub anymore." The room went quiet, forks pausing midair. Then Clara laughed. "You're kidding. My husband's been saying I shower too much, maybe he's right for once." Another friend, Tom, chimed in, "My knees thank me if I skipped a few." "You sure about this, El?" She nodded, pulling out a printout Jake had sent, expert advice from the American Geriatric Society. "Sure as I'm sitting here. Try it. You'll see." And they did. Over the next few weeks, Eleanor turned into Millfield's unofficial hygiene guru. Clara cut back to twice a week and raved about her softer skin. Tom swapped his daily soak for a washcloth and swore he felt 10 years younger. Even Margie, the one with the hip fracture, called to say she ditched her shower chair for spot cleaning, grinning through the phone. "No more slipping for me. Thanks to you." Eleanor soaked it in, not just the praise, but the connection. Her little tea time confession had sparked a quiet revolution, and it felt damn good to lead it. She'd lost a day to that infection, but she'd gained something bigger, a community waking up to a smarter, safer way to age. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Eleanor sat on her porch with a cup of chamomile, the air thick with the scent of her garden. She thought back to that October morning, the slip, the bruise, the fear, and smiled. It wasn't a defeat, it was her turning point. She'd shed an old burden, one sudsy rinse at a time, and found a rhythm that fit her life at 72. Cleanliness wasn't about water volume or steam clouds, It was about listening to her body, trusting its wisdom over society's noise. She'd proven it. Less risk, more life. And as she sipped her tea, watching fireflies blink across her yard, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Her journey wasn't just hers anymore, it was a gift she could share. If I can do it, she'd tell anyone who'd listen, so can you. Talk to your doctor, find your balance. It's not about giving up, it's about getting smart. And that's the bottom line. After 70, less can be more. 8 shocking facts had flipped Eleanor's world, but they'd also set her free to garden, to laugh, to live on her terms. So what about you? What's one change you'd make after hearing her story? Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear how Eleanor's tale hits home for you. Maybe it's swapping a shower for a wipe, or just rethinking what clean means as we age. Share your thoughts, your wins, your questions. Let's keep this going. And if you've loved tagging along with Eleanor, hit that subscribe button. There's more where this came from, stories of health, heart, and the wild ride of growing older. Thanks for being here. Let's keep blooming, just like Eleanor's garden.